we also see that financially all the time, which, is part of the mission with our company is that when you're surrounded by a bunch of folks who maybe also are struggling with their finances or have a similar background to you, it's hard to know that there is another path outside of it. So we always encourage nurses like, yeah, obviously if you just go and start the side gig or whatever it is, you're going to make more money right away for sure. There'll be more coming in. But if you don't have the holes plugged and sort of the right foundation, the house will still crumble eventually.
Welcome back to CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Finnel, and today we have a very special guest, Patrick here, who is the founder of Nurse Wallet. And we're going to bring a very special topic to you guys today, which is side gigs. I have had many of you ask me, what can I do during CRNA school? How can I earn some extra cash on the side? So this episode is for you if you're wondering what it is you can do. Maybe you're even saving for CRNA school and you want something you can do in addition to working bedside. So today is going to be an episode you do not want to miss. So stay tuned.
Perfect. Great. Jay, do you want to start with talking about just sort of a high level on side gigs in nursing?
Yeah, sure. So I think high level is, I think most nurses could probably agree that they're all looking for something. Maybe it's not even because, they necessarily want additional income, but maybe they want something more flexible, something that can allow them to work more from home. I know that's kind of how I got my first taste into doing side gigs. I was a CRNA making good money, but I had a young family and I really desired to work less at the hospital and more from home. I think I'm not alone in that. I think 85% of nurses are females. So I think we all kind of experience this mom or parent guilt that we go through when we're spending a lot of our time out of the home. Also, I think nurses too, just with, and especially this today, where we're at today in our economy, we do need to make more money. Things are not getting more, or things are getting more and more expensive. And, I think nurses are at that cusp of, we make enough, but we don't make enough to really allow a lot of extras in our life, right? So we're all looking for ways, if we want to spend an extra $500 on something big for the family or take a trip, we're usually hustling to make that extra money to give us that flexibility in our income.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a couple things there that I think are super important that we see a lot with our nurses. So, for quick context, what we do at Nurse Wallet is we help a community of over 50,000 nurses manage their finances and career. So everything from understanding exactly how much money you're going to take home and then plan for your financial future. And then how do you make your career match, including side gigs, match the financial goals that you have? And I think from the nurses that we've seen that have had successful side gig journeys, a lot of it starts with what are my goals? So you just mentioned a couple. Hey, we have a big family trip coming up, or, I want to pay for a sports camp for, one of my kids coming up, or maybe I need some more flexibility. And I think the real key to it is precisely defining what that goal is, which I think can be really scary for some, because I think most people, nurse or not, don't feel like they ever have quote unquote enough money. And so the key is, hey, where am I trying to go? And then backing into where do I actually stand right now, which I think is really challenging, specifically for nurses if you're working a variable schedule, if you're working across multiple different types of gigs. And so I think those two things together are the really key step towards picking out what is the right side gig for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And having that in mind on what you want to, what do you want to make? What's your target goal as far as what do you want to make from the side gig? Another thing I hear all the time, even as a CRNA, is that when you pick up overtime, they're like, but you should see how much they take out in taxes. And it's kind of like this sucker punch. Like, okay, I worked really hard and it's a stressful environment. I went into work an extra 12 or 24 hours in a week. And then you feel like half of it is just gone when you get your actual paycheck. So I love that Nurse Wallet helps nurses kind of have an understanding of what that's going to look like prior to even going down that path. It allows you to help budget, for what you can take home.
Yeah, and I think what's really frustrating for a lot of folks is that as you make more and more, the marginal taxes that you get on each additional dollar are higher. But one of the sort of scripts that we hear all the time that isn't true is, hey, if I work more, I'll actually make less money. It's only those additional dollars over each tax threshold that are getting taxed more. So yeah, certainly taxes are very real. super frustrating as you make more, you're sort of not feeling like you get the full result. But it is always worth it, not maybe worth it for your personal situation, but you are actually going to take home more money. I feel like that was one of the disappointing things we first learned when we were designing this product for nurses, is that especially for nurses who are getting paid weekly, sometimes that, a little bit of extra overtime on that given week is really going to be taxed at a rate that's going to make you feel like, hey, was this even worth it? So I totally hear you on that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a lot of it just expectations, understanding where like you said, what is being taxed. So I guess I would love to get into exploring different roles that you see nurses do for side gigs, especially let's talk about remote nursing, because I think that's a really hot topic right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we've seen is, especially for nurses with higher degrees of credentialing, is the sort of like telehealth and sort of like remote consulting for either different companies or for even on a clinical side. So sometimes we actually help some of our nurses get roles for companies where they might not even be seeing a patient on that given sort of Zoom call they're on, but they're providing consulting services given, their specific expertise in that area. So I think that's one that we've seen be really successful. The other ones are actually just leveraging your experience in the nursing profession more broadly. So we see a lot of nurses have success with writing or even providing writing feedback to companies like Nurse Wallet who are looking to reach a nursing audience. Similarly on content creation or sort of content feedback. So I know a lot of pushback you get is sometimes like, hey, I'm not an influencer. I'm not trying to be in front of the camera. And I think neither am I. So I think, this podcast being the exception, I don't like to do a ton of that, but there is a huge opportunity for nurses to participate in a lot of the healthcare technology ecosystem that is emerging. And I think for a long time, nurses unfortunately have not had a seat at the table. Finally, I think you're starting to see some companies at least try to take steps in that direction. And I think there's a growing appetite for nurses to really be able to lend their expertise that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have seen that too, just in my, I would call it very relatively short period of time, kind of putting myself front and center in the business world of things. I definitely lived under a rock for a very long time where I kind of was like, oh, my community is my community. I don't really need to explore elsewhere. And back when I launched Teach RN, I finally was like, okay, Jenny, I really have to start networking outside of my comfort zone. And it really opened my eyes to people really want your insights. And I've been told numerous times that just the insights, and you don't even realize you have these insights because it's just common sense to you. And you just think everyone should know these things. But I think nurses undervalue what they know to be true because they worked at bedside. And so you do have a lot of value for consulting for different businesses who want a perspective from a bedside nurse. So these are opportunities that you can seek out. LinkedIn by far is one of the best ways to find these opportunities. Of course, there's job boards and things of that nature that are remote, but I personally think you can find a lot of opportunities directly straight from LinkedIn. And obviously, I know you guys said you help with that area as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And on LinkedIn specifically, one of the ways that, Nurse Wallet has found a lot of folks that we have provided part-time work to on a remote basis is nurses who put themselves out there. And to your point, I think a lot of folks underappreciate how helpful they could be to certain businesses. And so maybe it doesn't happen over at times, but we found that actually leads to a lot of great partnerships.
Yes, 100%.
Well, hello, future CRNA, another daily dose of inspiration along your CRNA journey. This success story starts with, I just wanted to post this as a reminder that you can get into CRNA school even with a low GPA. I would always see people posting their stats with a high GPA, community service, every certification, asking if they had a shot at school, and feel so discouraged about my own application. I got into school with my first degree GPA of a 2.98 with C's in most of my science classes and completely failing out after my freshman year. My nursing GPA was just a 3.4. I never really took any classes, only microbiology, general chemistry as prerequisites for nursing school since I had a previous C's. My science GPA is still probably way under a 3.0. The only certification I have is a CCRN. I have nothing special under my belt like committees or community service. I was just flat out honest with my grades in my interview and emphasized my passion and dedication to becoming a CRNA in my personal statements. I hope this was helpful for someone because I know how it feels to see all the stats people post and feel that you will never make it because you don't have a perfect competitive GPA. You can do it. I just love this so much. Thank you, who you are, for sharing this, because this really truly does give so many hope. And hope is a powerful, powerful thing. If you have hope, you have belief. If you have belief, you take action. So thank you so much for sharing this. You do not have to be perfect. The road to CRNA, while it's going to be full of ups and downs, and yes, with these kind of statistics, you may face rejection. More than likely you will, but that should be the expectation. And then you should try to find ways to grow and spread your reach. Try out different programs. You never know unless you try. And, this student gave themselves a chance, even though they weren't sure if they'd make it. And I guess I wanted to also point this out because recently we launched a CRNA guarantee program, which I'm so thrilled about. But you guys, it was really hard to pick students, and I saw so much in all these students, and I wanted to accept every single one, but we couldn't do that. And I've said it, but I want to say it again, especially if you're listening to this podcast and that was you. I believe in you. I really, really believe in you. And I hope you believe in yourself, to give yourself the gift of trying. So with that, I'll leave you guys something to ponder, and let's get back into the show.
I would love to hear some success stories like that you have that kind of stick with you from the Nurse Wallet community, as far as what have you seen kind of resonate the most, as far as, I know we talked a little bit about remote nursing, but are there any other types of side gigs that your community does that you feel are really successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I touched on it briefly, but I think one of them is in nurse writing, and that can be very broad. I think sometimes that originally meant actual medical writing, but we've hired a few nurses, won't put their name on blast right now, but who have been able to make, a few extra $1,000s per month in providing writing services, originally just for us, but then by getting their name out there now for several others. And these were bedside nurses who, aren't necessarily writing about, don't have a degree in journalism or anything like that, but are more so writing about their either experience as a nurse in a specific field, or their experience navigating life as a sort of night shift nurse. Or we've hired a new grad nurse who documented sort of her journey through, finishing clinicals, taking that first role at the bedside, and sort of like providing that sort of advice and almost mentorship at scale. So yeah, she wasn't mentoring an individual nurse, but I know you're super passionate about, and I think is really the holy grail of that. But even just providing some of that experience on a platform, there's really ways to monetize that as a side gig. And then I think if you're even more comfortable, another thing that we've seen a ton of success with is sort of really lightweight video creation. So not necessarily like creating advertising materials for a specific brand, but just in putting your sort of story out there. There are companies out there that will want the perspective of a nurse and either will pay you to advertise their product or just pay for that content itself of understanding the nurse's journey. So we've seen those as two specific nurses that I can think of off the top of my head. The third, which we touched on briefly, is brand consulting for companies that are interested in the nursing space. So for example, take a company maybe like Nurse Wallet that is providing nurse financial advice. And, we do have a head nurse. We have several nurses on the staff, but I personally am not a nurse by trade. And so it's really helpful. Sometimes we will actually pay nurses to help design a new feature we're building or provide feedback. And we've had a lot of success in getting sort of new nurses to do that on a part-time basis. And I know lots of other technology companies in the space looking for that as well.
That's really cool. And that's a great opportunity. I think something that nurses don't think about, that we can actually kind of lead the way in developing technology that's going to help us. Particularly, we're so used to having technology made for us, but not by us. And this is a really great shift in that culture where, like you said, nurses are now having a seat at the table to have a say in the design, have a say in this feature, which really could greatly impact care because we are the end user. We are the ones who are at the bedside doing the care. So if we're involved in the development of, our, portals that we're using or the tools that we're using at bedside, it's only going to make us more effective and more efficient at what we are intending to do, which is patient care. So I think that's wonderful. So again, you guys keep your nose out for things like this. One thing that I want to, obviously, I'm going to give myself a plug here that I feel really passionate about. And I'll give some backstory too, as far as why I developed Teach RN and why it's so meaningful and why I think that nurses are uniquely suited to do this type of a side gig. I've been mentoring now for 4 years. We've mentored over 6,000 nurses pursuing CRNA. And prior to this adventure that I've been on, I just wanted to help because people were reaching out to me saying, Jenny, I'm struggling, or I'm not getting interviews, or I'm being rejected, and I don't understand why. So-and-so had less credentials than me, and I still got rejected. And a lot of times these faculty or these programs, these CRNA programs, just do not have the bandwidth to give personalized feedback to hundreds of applicants. They just simply say it was a competitive application cycle, try again next year. And that's really doesn't give them any direction on how to move forward. So I started helping. And through that experience, I realized, oh my gosh, this is a much bigger need than I ever imagined. And we're not unique, meaning, yes, we are a very small niche community of pre-CRNA hopefuls. And there's about 55,000 CRNAs in the world, mostly in just the United States or our VA hospitals. But that being said, I know we're not unique. I know there's other nurses who are looking for career guidance. And one of the things that I started noticing within our own community is the students who were receiving the mentorship, who were getting the good results, came back to me and say, hey, Jenny, how can I give back? This has been so impactful for me. I want to help too. And I'm like, there's something to this because it kind of creates a circle system of gratitude where, it's like holding the door for someone. They're more likely to hold the door for the next person coming behind them. So I'm like, what if we did this on a big scale where nurses help nurses? Nurses were mentoring other nurses for career advancement opportunities. Nurses should be the ones paying other nurses to do this work because we're doing meaningful work. So Teach RN is really about that. It's about rewarding a nurse who is willing to put their time and effort into helping another fellow nurse.
Dreaming of becoming a CRNA? Look no further than CRNA School Prep Academy. With seasoned faculty coaches, advanced ICU education, and weekly mentorship sessions, we are the only tool you will need to gain acceptance into CRNA school. I look forward to seeing you soon. Click the link below to learn more.
So Teach RN, we currently have about 113 active mentors, over 265 services, and we've paid out over about $110,000 to nurse mentors at this point. And it's a really great way, again, to earn additional income by actually doing something you already enjoy doing, helping other people, helping nurses nonetheless. So you do things like essay edits, resume edits, mock interviews, consulting, things of that nature. You can book your time that way. So again, it's a really nice way for nurses to connect with other nurses. And what makes us unique is there's platforms like Wisnet and Hey Tutor and things like that, but it's a catch-all, meaning it's everything and everybody who comes to these sites, where we want to focus on nurses. And so again, Teach RN their focus is how can we help nurses? How can we help them orient to being new to the ICU? How can we help them make career changes? What if you want to go back to school and you're not sure if it's the right choice? Before you spend all this time and money investing in a graduate degree, maybe you should seek some mentorship first to make sure it's really the right career fit. And ultimately, our goal and our mission is to make sure nurses are more fulfilled and more satisfied in their careers through peer-to-peer guidance and support.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the things that is me so excited about Teach RN is that a lot of the nurses that we see on the Nurse Wallet platform who maybe want to make a career change or want to sort of up level their sort of take home earnings beyond just taking a few overtime shifts or maybe a small side gig is that the right career pivot for me or the right next step? And whether that's going back to school or taking per diem shifts on a per diem platform or switching units or et cetera, et cetera. And it's really hard sometimes to get that support within your own sort of work environment because there's obviously so much, inherent bias in the other people who aren't making that move, who maybe you're working on the unit with. And so going somewhere, objective and third party to get still that nurse support, I think is fantastic and really excited to see what you guys build.
Thank you. Yeah. And I also have noticed too, and I notice this quite often, that say like maybe a nurse wants to ask a question. She's new to a unit, but she's scared and intimidated. Maybe she doesn't want to feel like her coworkers are going to think she's stupid or she's not worthy or whatever it is. There is definitely this kind of idea of I have to be perfect, which is unfortunate. I think it's a cultural thing that we've done to ourselves. But nurses don't have anyone to turn to because they're too embarrassed or shy to reach out to their actual coworkers. So by going to a site like TeachRN, you can find another CV-ICU nurse that you don't know, that you will never work with because they live across the country. And you can receive this mentorship that's really tailored to what you're struggling with. So there's something really key about that as well, to allow this kind of safe haven for nurses to feel like I can be who I am. I don't feel like I have to be judged here at work. And I can go home and talk about a difficult situation and work through that emotional baggage that I'm carrying without having my coworkers really having to know about it. So again, I think that's really key as well. And I think that that's a very needed aspect of what TeachRN is out to achieve. But yeah, I appreciate your support of our mission. And for those of you listening, I highly encourage you to go consider TeachRN as a side gig. But kind of just to kind of wrap this up, I would love to kind of get into what are some things that nurses should think about as far as balancing their side gigs and their home life. And most women wear a million hats, guys wear a million hats too. But I feel like sometimes you try to do so much and you end up kind of being hollow or empty because you're always pouring into someone else, but you're not pouring into yourself.
Absolutely. I think the most successful nurses we've seen who have balanced side gigs, even if they're multiple clinical side gigs where you're working at one facility and then you're working with a per diem platform somewhere else, or you're picking up shifts at a med spa or giving, IV therapy on the road. Like lots of great options for, side gigs that are still in the sort of clinical realm. But the nurses we've seen be the most successful are the ones who do a good job of managing their schedule. And so I think obviously, nurses know this, but, based on when you're working, that's how you're getting paid. And so holding really tight guidelines before you get into that commitment or sort of the additional work you're going to take is really crucial. So you mentioned managing multiple hats. Say you have a family obligation every Saturday morning, holding tight to that and then knowing, hey, maybe I don't want to be doing things on Friday night as well. And creating those really strict boundaries from yourself is really helpful. So one of the things that we do in some of the sort of courses that we'll teach to our nurses around sort of financial support is about creating really clear constraints for yourself that then outside of those, you can spend or do whatever it is you need to do guilt-free. So whether that's not work guilt-free or spend on the things you need to. But if you sort of take care of the really big boulders up front of what are going to be those like key foundational pillars for your financial life, that lets you not worry about some of the small things. And then you're not getting overburdened with, hey, I'm really tired. I want to go get an extra $5 coffee at Starbucks. And then you're not having that like one-off, that small, straw that broke the camel's back on something small, because you're taking care of the foundational pieces first. And I think something you mentioned around, not being able to get that advice from your coworkers on trying to be perfect on the unit. We also see that financially all the time, which, is part of the mission with our company, is that when you're surrounded by a bunch of folks who maybe also are struggling with their finances or have a similar background to you, it's hard to know that there is another path outside of it. So we always encourage nurses, like, yeah, obviously if you just go and start the side gig or whatever it is, you're going to make more money right away, for sure. There'll be more coming in. But if you don't have the holes plugged and sort of the right foundation, the house will still crumble eventually. So getting some of those foundational things built, and, love to help with the Nurse Wallet. So, download the app, feel free to reach out to me. We also do some courses and things like that. But yeah, we think that foundation is really the key to the balance.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that. And I equally agree. You don't want to spend all your extra time working for side gigs to not, and at the end of the day, not have any additional money, to still feel broke. So I do think some checks and balances. What are you spending your money on? Get really, really clear on that. And it sounds like Nurse Wallet helps nurses really itemize that type of spending and get a clear grasp on what it is you want to accomplish by working extra. And I think for, people who are CRNA path, people who are getting ready to not work for almost 3 years and take on loads of debt, trust me, that's like sets in panic, just even saying those words. One thing that I always stress too is making sure that you got your credit cards paid off. Taking care of the debt that is not really forgiving debt is really, really key. And making sure that you have a good credit, in case you had to take out a loan of some kind, having a backup plan in place. But being realistic with your time and what the expectations are. It's not realistic to think in CRNA school that you can go work, 20, 30 hours of side gigs. It's not. But, if you worked, 8 hours a month, what could that do? What would you allocate those funds to? And if that was $300, $400, what would that go towards? And then equally knowing your budget, saying, I might have to cut back on X, Y, and Z because these are my needs, these are my wants. And, it's okay to splurge every now and then on a want, but maybe you should anticipate how frequently that can be based on what side gig you can maintain. I know for me, I worked about 8 hours a week for the first 3 to 4 months of the program. And then I was like, no, this is not worth risking getting a bad grade, not worth risking my own happiness. And so I kind of bit the bullet and stopped working and just took on, just lived. Luckily I had my husband who supported, his income helped. Not everyone has that. Some people are on their own. So I love the fact that we're at least sharing optionalities out there for people listening. It is a really real need that nurses need to find ways to make extra income. And actually this is kind of brings me to this, maybe it's off subject. I don't think so, but I saw this reel recently that was really awesome. That there was this professor who filled a jar full of golf balls. And then he asked everyone if it's full, and they're like, yeah, it's full. And then he started filling it with like little, I don't know if they were like chocolate chunks. I'm not really sure, but they were like little pieces of something else. And then he's like, now is it full? And they're like, yeah, now it's full. Then he took sand and he poured sand into the jar, and then it really was full. In fact, he probably would have gone one step further and put water in it, but that's what I thought when I was watching it. But the takeaway was, the big things, the golf balls are the really important things in your life that you have to set priorities around. And then, there's things that like the chocolate, like things like your work-life balance and things that you do to kind of add fulfillment in your life. And then the sand's everything else, the small things. And you want to make sure you're taking care of the golf balls first. Otherwise, if you put the sand in first, the little things, you wouldn't have room for the golf balls. But the big takeaway was know what your priorities are, set your boundaries, know what it's okay to say no to. And one of the things I had to really come to terms with, because I'm definitely kind of a people pleaser. I know that about myself. I don't like saying no to people. But one of the things that helped me the most when it comes to setting boundaries was when I say yes to someone, whatever it may be, when I say yes, I equally am saying no to something else. So what am I saying no to when I'm saying yes? And when I frame my questions like that in my brain, it makes it much easier to say no, because I always take the mindset too. No doesn't mean never. No, a lot of times just means not yet. There's right. Always an opportunity down the road to do something that you wanted to do, but maybe it's just not the right timing. So I wanted to leave you guys with that advice as well. But thank you for sharing. I would love you guys to check out Nurse Wallet. Sounds like a really great tool for the pre-CRNA. And if you're with Nurse Wallet and you're listening to this episode, I encourage you to check out TeachRN as a great avenue to earn some side income and give back to the nursing community.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last sort of thing I'll throw in is that, we definitely provide a lot of options today, but everybody's situation is personal. And wherever there's an opportunity for us to help financially outside of that, please reach out to us directly. Happy to find a personalized solution that works for you. And Jenny, thank you so much for taking the chance to chat, and super excited for what TeachRN has next.
Thank you. Likewise. It was my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Jenny.
Hey, future CRNA, as always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway. Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.